What got me last night about the debates, and that is that my son talked to me later on the phone, and Alexander said, so if you had to vote for one of them, let's just say that you had to, for whatever reason, you had to vote for one of them. Of course, I wouldn't be voting in the Democratic primaries unless it was 1948, and then I would have voted for Harry Truman. I definitely would have supported Truman, but nonetheless, if I had to vote, he said, if you had to vote for one of the candidates, and I can't remember the fellow's name, but he was the bald-headed fella on the far right. It's the one that I would have had to vote for if I had to vote for any of them. For a couple of reasons. Number one, whenever they asked him what the biggest threat was, he immediately said that he felt like the Chinese were the biggest threat. And I agree with that. I think Donald Trump would agree with that. The Chinese are our enemy, without a doubt. There is no doubt. I mean, they make a big thing out of the Russians. The Russians are, for the most part, a has-been. It doesn't mean that we should ignore them. It doesn't mean that they're not also our enemy. But the Chinese are sneaky, and they have an agenda. And, more importantly than anything else, the Chinese have an industrious way of being able to target what their goals are and meet them, because they're a communist nation. I mean, if one advantage of being a dictatorship is that when you say go, everybody goes. And if everybody doesn't go, those that don't, you just shoot them or put them in prison. And there's no due process. So, and that's the Democrats. That's the Chinese. But the guy on the far right, that was a bald-headed guy, and I wish I can't remember his name. I don't try to remember all the names that are up there. I really don't. It doesn't matter to me. I wouldn't vote for any of them if you had a gun to my head. But again, using the hypothetical that Alexander was giving me, that I had to vote for one for whatever reason, I'd vote for that fella. The second reason I'd vote for him is when they asked him what should be done about the Mueller investigation. And basically, in a roundabout way, he said nothing. I mean, he said that nothing should be done, because when he says that when he goes and visits with different people at different town halls, they do not bring up the Mueller investigation. As I've said in previous broadcasts, the Mueller investigation is a dead frog. It is nothing. It is empty. And it is, without a doubt, boring. And I think that is found probably on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, for the public in general. But this fella, he did outline those two areas, and he did, unlike the others. I mean, Beto was up there, and they said, "Oh, what's the biggest threat? The environment." Really? The environment? I don't believe in all of this environmental wacko stuff. I don't believe in climate change or global warming or global cooling or any of this stuff. We have an environment. And does the temperature change? Yes, it goes up and it goes down. And it goes up and down in accordance with the sun and our own geology. That's it. And meteorology is tied to our geology. It has nothing to do with any impact that man has on this planet. And any amount of money spent on this environmental wacko ridiculousness of global warming or global cooling or whatever they want to call it is a waste of money. And I'm 100% against it. That's my opinion. They're a bunch of idiots. Speaking of idiots, Elizabeth Warren was up there, or shall we say, what do they call her? Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren was up there, and I didn't get the front end of the debate because I didn't even know it was on. I'm supposed to be on vacation. I was actually out here on the porch reading a book, and my son called me and said, "Are you watching the debates?" And I said, "What debates?" He says, "The Democratic debates." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I can get them." But I went inside, and after thumbing through the channels for a while, I finally found them. And I came in when Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren was talking. And she's bloviating about the fact that the biggest, number one health threat in the United States are guns. Guns, yes. My gun, all of my guns are a health threat to the United States. And it should be a national emergency, she says, to undertake a study of guns and their use. But what was interesting about this, and the reason I'm bringing it up wasn't just the regular flap trap of, oh, guns are bad or blah, 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 blah. But it was the fact that the media asked her a pointed question, which I hate to take my hat off to the media, but every now and then they do ask a good question. Of course, they didn't follow it up, and they didn't force her to follow it up, like I said before. But they asked her, they said, would you try to confiscate guns? Or how would you go about that? And very slyly, Elizabeth Warren slithered around that question because she knows not to step in that, because there's too many Democrats who are gun advocates, who are hunters, who are collectors. Most of them are Republican, but there are some Democrats out there. Anyway, she did not answer that question. But it's a very good question, because we all know what the Democrats really want to do is confiscate our weapons. I mean, when it comes down to it, the Democrats, and maybe not every single Democrat, but your wacky ones, your liberal, your over the edge, like the teenager in Congress, they would like to seize everybody's gun. We've known it for years. They would like to scratch through the Second Amendment. Well, there's a lot of amendments they'd like to scratch through, but the Second Amendment is probably at the top of their list. And they definitely like to regulate the First Amendment, starting with anybody who disagrees with them and decides that they're going to speak publicly against their policies, like I'm doing here.
Good.
Good.
It's Crystal Palace for adults.